How would I change the story in Scarlet and Violet? Well, as much as I love it, probably take Shinx out just a little bit. I get it, it's very important, but we could tone it down just a little bit. Hiya heya, what's good y'all? Soul here, and welcome back to the story mode. So before we get started here, it should probably be noted that this is actually a response video, but not in the traditional fashion that we usually do things. This is actually the response to a question that I received over on Twitter, and I figured, you know what? This is a big enough question to justify an entire video, so why not? Which is why, if you have a question that you would like answered in video format, you can go ahead and @ me on Twitter, Blue.Sky, or you can join the Discord and tag me in the video ideas tab. And of course, you can get as specific in that question as you want, whether it be related to Generation 10 or Gen 5 remakes, if you want to know how many Pokemon that I want to see or expect to see in Legend ZA this year. You can go ahead and ask anything you want, and it doesn't even have to be Pokemon related. I do have a second channel where I can talk about anything we want, so go ahead and ask me anything. As per usual, links to everything in my description. Is that it? Are we good? The plugs are out the way. Are we done with that? All right, sick. Let's get into the video, please. So, last month on Twitter, I got a big old question from Ray the Commenter. Yo, Soul, love your content, man. I loved the video about how Scarlet and Violet could use a definitive version, and I agree. I'm replaying it and I just keep telling myself that this and that could be fixed. But graphics aside, what are some story and plot aspects that could change? Now, to my understanding, and anybody that's been around long enough, go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong, because I can't remember every single thing that I've talked about in regards to Scarlet and Violet. We have talked a lot about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. We have discussed many a times how I and how you guys would have changed a couple of aspects of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. However, that's mostly in the graphical and mechanical department. What I don't think I've ever done was actually go out of my way to explain what story changes I would make to Scarlet and Violet. Especially because I made it very clear, I enjoyed the story for what it was. I don't think it's perfect, of course not. I don't think anything is perfect, but I do think that it's a much stronger story than what Generation 8 gave us. So when I get into this discussion here, this is not coming from the perspective who thinks that this game's story is initially flawed. These are just some things that, generally speaking, I feel would probably help make the story just a little bit more interesting to me personally. And of course, you can more than disagree. We don't share the same ideas. That's totally fine. So I guess that just about does it for the introduction stuff, so why don't you go ahead, get cozy, maybe grab yourself a little bit of a snack or a meal, possibly a stack of pancakes that you can smother your relish on, and let's go ahead and answer Ray the Commenter's question. What are some changes that I would make to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's story? For the sake of keeping this video at a reasonable length, I have written down a couple of general changes that I would make to the story here and there. So why don't we go ahead and start there, starting with changes I would make to the protagonist. I'm sure that a lot of you guys can agree that we're definitely at a much bigger point with Pokemon where we should have much stronger customization with our characters. And when I say customization, I mean the decisions that we make in-game having an actual effect on others around us or the story in general. In this big ol' open world Pokemon game, I think something that would make people a little more invested in their playthroughs would to have something of a low-key morality system. This is something I definitely have a video idea for to explain in much more depth for like modern Pokemon in general, but I feel like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet definitely had a solid opportunity to do something with this. For example, maybe I actually really relate to Team Star. Maybe I personally feel like instead of tearing down their operation, that they had a very solid point, and maybe I could become a major player for Team Star. This could be another interesting way of forcing Penny out of her shell to have to come and confront me. After all, I could definitely spin it my way and make it so it's a situation where Penny doesn't really understand Team Star's leaders as well as she thought she did. Trust me, I know that that one's definitely a little more on the random side, but to be fair, I pretty much explained that as I was coming up with it. But that there was just a very generalized way to explain how a morality system could have worked in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. And hey, it's definitely very possible that this could have played into the main story as well. Maybe as far as the portal goes that we were supposed to close in Area Zero, maybe I feel like those Pokemon deserve as much of a chance to be in the modern era as any other Pokemon that already is. So maybe I don't want to close the portal. Again, a little on the extreme side, right? But again, that is the beauty of a morality system. You choose how crazy you want to be when it comes to what kind of plotline you want to pursue. And Pokemon, in some ways more than others, has developed a lot in terms of customization to the point where I feel like it's ridiculous that we can't really choose our own paths. Though I do completely understand that having our first open world game also have a morality system would be kind of ridiculous, but again, if it were up to me, Pokemon is so big now that we could definitely attempt something like that. Feel free to disagree. Again, I get it. Some of it is absurd, but hey, we're just having a little bit of fun here. We're just dreaming. And then my other change that I would make in regards to the protagonist isn't particularly involving the protagonist, but actually the protagonist's parents. Our parents, I guess. I feel like it has been well overdue to actively have a parent in some way, shape, or form involved in the story. Crazy that we've just never really had that. Hell, we had a father one time in this series, and he was a gym leader that we'd never talked to again after we beat him. Crazy stuff, that. No, but in this particular instance, I'm specifically saying that we should involve them in the story in some way. Imagine like a gym-related plotline or something of the sort where we hear about this extremely strong and talented trainer that at some point was a part of Yuva or Naranja Academy. Through the gym challenge, you're fighting all these different people that have previously fought this trainer at some point in their lives, this trainer that only really went by a code name. They're giving you stories and history about this character that's actually really entertaining, only to find out that character is your own parent, your mother. And maybe once you truly find that out, she goes out of her way to prove herself as one of the strongest trainers in all of Paldea. There's definitely other things you could throw in to make a plotline like that very interesting or entertaining, but I feel like that would play out more like a side quest or something like that. But at the same time, I feel like it would be very, very fun to have as a plot somewhere in there. However, though, if we want to get a little more direct in that sense, we could have a plotline where your parent was actually involved in the excavation for Terrapagos. Obviously, they discovered this great power, but ultimately deemed it way too dangerous and decided to leave it alone. And that way, when you do finally get to the Terrapagos plotline, your parent is actually involved in a way you didn't realize, and they're actually very scared for you to go out of your way to find this power because they don't know what will happen if you mess with it too much. This is obviously a very, very minute change that I would just make to make the parent just a little more involved, because it's very strange to me that in pretty much every single Pokemon game we've ever experienced, we never talk to our mom at all, unless it's, again, second gen, where she's consistently calling you asking if she could borrow some money. Crazy stuff, man. Anyway though, that just about does it for the changes that I would make specifically to the protagonist. Now let's talk about some plot points that I would change from Scarlet and Violet. Oh, and in this instance, I'm not referring to the DLC whatsoever. The DLC, it's doing its own thing. That's whatever. Although I will say that having the character dynamic between the siblings with Carmine and Kieran would probably spice up the main story in a very unique way. I feel like that would be really, really cool. But I don't know about all that. That's a discussion for another day. Let's focus on the base game's plot. Now, I will say, as far as the Team Stars plot, I don't think I would change much there, if I'm being completely honest. I think that all around, the misunderstood kids angle, whether it be from the perspective of the Team Star leaders or from Penny's perspective, I think it's done very solid. I like it the way it is. They even went out of their way to give us like a little one-off dialogue event with the Team Star leaders in the school. Like, I really don't think there's a lot of ways I would change that to make it better. I love that story as it is. Great development all around, so let's look elsewhere. More importantly than anything though, I've said multiple times that I think that the gym storyline is easily the weakest, and I feel like that's because there should have and could have been a lot more focus on Nemona as a character. Throughout the other two storylines, we spend so much time getting to know all of these characters and watch them develop right in front of our eyes, whether it be the Team Star kids, Penny, Arven. We get a little bit of history about these characters. We learn where they're coming from, where their mindsets are at. But Nemona? None of that. Don't get me wrong, I very much enjoy Nemona's character, she's fun. But I feel like there are definitely some plot lines we could have utilized to explain why she is so gung-ho heavy on battling everything and everybody she knows. We have about 3 sentences of dialogue, maybe, if that explains who she is or at least where she came from. She is the youngest daughter of 2 billionaires, possibly even trillionaires, because those guys were the developers behind the Rotom phone. That is literally like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates level money. Like, that's huge. But it's so briefly slipped in amongst the dialogue between all of the characters in Area Zero that it's very easy to not pay too much attention after the fact. You pay attention to the dialogue and she doesn't refer to her parents as mom or dad, it's mother and father. That's strange. I definitely don't call my parents that. That sounds kind of detached, doesn't it? We're also aware that she has an older sister that's allegedly supposed to take over the company when something or if something happens to their parents. Now, apparently, Nemona never really had an interest in anything like that, and given her love for battling, it's not all that far-fetched to believe something like that. However, are we sure that there's not like a reason that led up to that? I feel like there's a story there. However, I feel like there could definitely be like a very specific story. I feel like the reason they didn't really want to go out of their way to pursue the potential like neglectful parent storyline with Nemona is because they were kind of already doing that with Arven. So I can completely understand why they probably felt it would be a little redundant to do that storyline again, which is why they didn't really focus on much of a story with Nemona. However, I feel like there's definitely still some potential that could have been had here. The older sister, again, that was extremely briefly mentioned, could easily have played a bigger role in a story like this one. I could definitely see a storyline in which, while we're learning about Nemona and how strong she really is when it comes to battling, maybe that older sister of hers feels like she's disappointing her parents and wants her to work alongside her to help run the company down the line. Obviously, Nemona would continuously deny this because that's not what she wants to do, but the older sister is probably not gonna have something like that. So maybe she's consistently hiring people, strong trainers or whatever, to maybe try and take down Nemona to really knock her down a peg and realize that her dream isn't realistic. And that could easily be an explanation as to why Nemona felt like she had to get so strong so quick, because she refuses to be dragged back into a life that she doesn't want to be a part of. That's not the future that she envisions for herself. This is a plot point that I could easily see fitting in between battling gym leaders and Nemona. Kind of like these little separate tests of skill to make sure that you're actually on the right path and that you're not like cheesing your way through gym leaders, but also potentially something that could be utilized to develop the relationship between Nemona and her sister. This way, it's not so much of a focus on Nemona and her parents as it is between the siblings themselves. That way, Penny could focus on friends, Nemona could focus on her sibling, and Arven can focus on his parents. Because Nemona doesn't need to be like the typical case of, oh, my parents abandoned me. No, her parents just respected her decision, but her sister didn't. Or, you know, at the very least, not in this scenario that I've come up with. But do you see what I'm getting at here? As one of the weaker storylines in Scarlet and Violet, I feel like this could definitely be a way to utilize Nemona as an actual character that does have either some kind of development or has already developed. We just get to actually see in real time why she developed the way that she did so that we can just understand her character more. Because again, I enjoy Nemona's character very much. She's one of the more fun rivals that we've ever had, and living definitive proof that rivals don't necessarily need to be assholes or have to be complete goody two-shoes to be a good rival. Because in reality, without her, we wouldn't have developed into a good of a trainer as we ended up being on our journey. She watched us grow from a potential rival to an actual genuine challenge that could help keep her on her toes. That's fine and dandy and a very, very unique way to play the rival situation, but my goodness, we could have used more information and just general learning when it comes to Nemona's story. But whatever, and who knows, maybe some other way we'll see something of Nemona's family, whether that be in the anime or something or other. And of course, when it comes to plot, the last thing that we need to take a look at here is the Titans plotline, or more specifically, Arven's storyline. Now this one here is definitely a mixed bag because depending on how you look at it, it could definitely sit in between like an okay storyline, like right there in the middle, or the best storyline by far. Arven's development from when we meet him to when we finally get the sandwich that actually helps his dog is truly an astounding little storyline to watch happen. Arven developed a lot as a character, we got to know him a lot, his relationship with Mabestiff is beautifully executed, and of course how he responds and handles the abandonment from his parents is very much justified. Like, by the time you get to a certain point in the story, you're sitting there thinking like, oh my goodness, no wonder he wants nothing to do with Miraidon or Kodaidon, and yet he still goes out of his way to make it a sandwich anyway so it's not stealing ours. Like, that is, what a good guy, man. What an awesome guy. So I don't think I would necessarily tear down the storyline that's already present, but specifically for the sake of conversation and in this hypothetical definitive edition for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, I think I would just take a different path with how the story is told for Arven. I feel like we would need to put him in a situation that makes him feel the need to pursue the actual story of what the hell happened to his parents and why they never got back to him and why they just kind of disappeared out of his life completely. In that sense, I would probably have the situation where Mabestiff gets hurt happen in real time during that, and maybe we do spend a little bit of time hunting down the proper ingredients to get the stuff that Mabestiff needs to heal, but in between that, we would run into individual Paradox Pokemon throughout Paldea and have little individual stories with them depending on where you are in the story. And during those individual portions, we would find more notes and things from the professor's research that would help understand why the professor was so obsessed with researching all of these different Paradox Pokemon and getting a better understanding of what kind of professor this truly was and why they were so dedicated to their research instead of dedicating any of their time to raising their kid. That way, the build up to Area Zero feels just a little less like sudden, if that makes any sense. Within the last 2 generations, Pokemon has done this thing where they kind of withhold any of like the big, major, world-ending like primary story until the end of the game, and I feel like we don't really need to do that. We could definitely put little things, or at least more things here and there in between to make it so that the ending doesn't feel so like, whoa, holy crap, things are happening now all of a sudden. And trust me, I definitely do think that they did a better job in 9th generation handling that story and how it got to us, but I feel like plotting out a little bit more amongst Arven's story could definitely make things feel like they're progressing just a little bit more naturally. Again though, like I said, I appreciate Arven's story for what it is, and it totally makes sense why he was more focused on helping his Mabestiff as opposed to finding his parents, because as a kid, you know, obviously something like that happens, you're gonna pretty much assume that your parents don't want anything to do with you. No cards back, no birthday card, no letters, nothing. Like, they just kind of left up and suddenly. He's gonna be resentful about it, but that doesn't mean he has to stop living his own life, which is why he prioritized helping Mabestiff. So I 100% totally get why they took the direction that they did. However, I feel like there are definitely ways that we could integrate the professor's story just a little bit more amongst what Arven is doing so that the buildup for that makes a little bit more sense. Does that make any sense? Literally had to delete like 10 lines of recording because I just remembered this is where I would have initially thrown in an evil team. Arven's story makes the most sense for something like that, doesn't it? A group of researchers that were so heavily dedicated and fixated on the professor's work that they would pretty much give anything to get their hands on like more Paradox Pokemon and understand what kind of timeline they come from and things like that. Hell, they could easily be the catalyst of what happens to Mabestiff at first, and then we would end up dealing with them throughout the course of Arven's story, and then eventually when we get to Area Zero, instead of just fighting random upset or angry or bothered Paradox Pokemon, we're dealing with these guys who are getting close to finally fully opening the portal and merging past, present, and future. Me personally, bro, I think a Team Paradox would go absolutely insane in this situation. And obviously, of course, these people would be trying to find a way to get past the professor's fail-safe security system, and we would be there to defend it if they try to or actually accomplish that. So I feel like that would easily work with a storyline for Arven. Okay. Now that that's been said, I think that actually does it for everything that I think would help the plot in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Again, enjoy it for what it is. Don't think that it's perfect, because perfect doesn't exist. It's just a concept, so I do feel like a couple of these things, in some ways or others, could definitely help. But obviously, Not everybody's going to agree with that, and that's totally fine. You could definitely have your own take on how the story for Scarlet and Violet should have gone. I know that there are plenty of people that do like the story, plenty of people that don't like the story, and people that are definitely mixed or in between, but hey, stories can always get better. That's the magic and that's the beauty of them. There's always different paths that can be taken. In reality though, at the end of the day, none of this matters all that much because Scarlet and Violet, as far as we know at least, is pretty much done. However, there is a very, very realistic future in which a Scarlet and Violet Definitive Edition could happen on the Switch 2 to help buy it a little bit more time for the development of Generation 10 or whatever's to come after Legends EA. So we'll play it by ear. Will they make story changes like this for that kind of a game? I have no idea. Probably not. It would probably be on the same par as, you know, what we got with Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, where it's like super minor until like the very end where things change up drastically. But again, this is all hypothetical, so we would have to play that one by ear. But hey, you know what? Maybe that is just me. So that just about does it for this one. A big special thank you to Ray the Commenter for the question. I had a lot of fun considering all of these potential alternative routes and things for the storyline of Scarlet and Violet. Even if some of them were a little more on the ridiculous side, it was just a lot of fun to come up with concepts and things like that. So thank you again for the question. If you have any others, go ahead and, you know, throw some more at me on Twitter or on Blue.Sky or on Discord. But that doesn't apply to just Ray. Obviously, that applies to everybody that's, you know, interested in having a video like this done for you. I'm definitely down to talk more about literally any Pokemon game that's already out there or whatever. Like just send me something, just send something my way and we'll work it out, because I definitely want to integrate you guys more into the videos throughout the course of this year, because we're definitely going to have a lot of back and forth about a lot of things that are happening in terms of Pokemon. But you know, I know that you guys want to have more conversations about that kind of thing, so go ahead and throw everything my way. Again, sorry for being redundant, but links in description to, you know, join the Discord, to follow me on Twitter or Blue.Sky so that we can have these conversations more often. But with all of that being said, I think I've said my piece, so I'm passing the mic over to you guys, and I want you guys to tell me everything that you guys are thinking in the comment section below. Do you think that the ideas presented here make a little bit of sense? You could definitely see a lot of these changes improving the story for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and you think that, you know, there could be some major changes if there were a definitive edition? Or are you on the opposing side? The story of Pokemon Scarlet is either just fine or it's complete garbage and there's nothing that can fix it, or there's nothing that can make it any better. Tell me everything that you guys are thinking in the comment section below, because you know for a fact that I am always going to be down there with you guys. But with that, it does appear to be skedaddle o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and do just that. I would like to thank you guys ever so much for watching. I truly do hope you enjoyed. Do me the greatest favor of dropping a like and a comment, and consider subscribing for more content just like this here. And with that, I'm gone. So thanks again, hope you enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Do me the greatest favor of taking good ass care, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.
So lead us, can't handle us, so cool, baby, scandalous. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So cool, baby, watch it now. It's a